Hi everybody, welcome back. Welcome to another small and beautiful corner of my little woodland recording studio. I want to talk to you this morning about what James chapter 3 calls the tongue. That is to say, how we use words, how we speak and write and otherwise communicate to each other. For it seems to me that this present situation has provided us with a fresh range of opportunities to talk with one another in different contexts, at home during the day where we might not normally be, or online in other contexts. And of course it's provided us with a new subject to talk about, which is somewhat dominating our horizons. We make the assumption all too often that what we say is a reflection of what we believe, what we think, what we've decided. So that the logic runs like this. We think about something and we decide, and then once we've decided what we think and considered everything that ought to be relevant, we then speak, and what we say reflects what we've decided in our hearts or in our minds. There is just enough truth in that understanding of the tongue to do damage. Of course, it's true that sometimes that's the way things work, but James chapter 3 warns us that the tongue can operate very often in an altogether different way. I encourage you to read the first 2/3 or so of James chapter 3, and then you'll see what I mean. In that chapter, James, the Lord's brother, uses a number of illustrations to describe the destructive and powerful effects of the tongue. The first couple, he says, are that the tongue is like the bit that you put in the mouth of a horse to direct where it should go, or the rudder of a great ship. And you notice that what those two illustrations have in common is that they don't suggest that the rudder follows the ship, or the bit follows the horse. Quite the contrary. The bit and the rudder direct where those things should go. And so maybe it's a surprise to us that actually, according to James, our words don't always reflect what we have decided in wisdom and in the cold light of day in our hearts. Rather, our words direct what we have decided, what we should subsequently decide and believe. Once we've said something, we are committed to it. It's not that we've thought about it and decided and then speak. It's that we speak and then we cannot think further about it. We've committed ourselves to a certain point of view by having spoken, just as the rudder directs a ship and a bit directs a horse. That will be bad enough if it weren't for the third illustration that James uses, where he remarks ominously and soberingly that the tongue is like a fire. How great a forest, he says, is set on fire by a single spark. So also the tongue is a fire, a world of evil within the body, which is itself set on fire by hell. So not only can our tongues, so to speak, run ahead of our minds and our hearts and our wisdom such that we have it, having done so, our tongues can then cause untold destruction and ruin and damage, which comes from the very fires of hell themselves. And of course that's all the worse because the imagery of a forest, woodland, trees is used elsewhere in Scripture to depict the people of God. So it seems James is saying that with our words we could run ahead of ourselves and burn the people of God down by speaking foolishly and unwisely. The fourth illustration makes matters still worse. James remarks that if you have a saltwater stream, it can't produce fresh water, and freshwater spring can't produce salt water. It's either one or the other. And in comparing this to the tongue, what James appears to be saying is that if we have the kind of tongue which is going to ruin and destroy people because it runs ahead of what we think in wisdom we ought to say, if we have that kind of tongue, a saltwater tongue, we are not going to be able to produce fresh water. A tongue that has done harm cannot do good. So you start to see how dangerous and destructive the tongue is. It can run ahead of our considered opinions and instead of reflecting our opinions, start to dictate them. Having done so, it can direct what we say, and it can even destroy people in future. And then, having done that, worst of all, perhaps, it's very hard to produce anything good from it. Somewhat sobering. I expect you'll agree with me.